Hey, how's it going? I missed you. It's been under a month though, so according to YouTube rules, I do get to keep this channel. Today I'm going to be talking about some Vape Train vanilla permutations of cream. I've got Vape Train Vanilla Cream, I've got Vape Train Vanilla Ice Cream, and I've got Vape Train Vanilla Buttercream Frosting. We're going to go over it. It's going to be a good time. You're going to forgive me for taking a couple weeks off. I'm excited. And here's the standard disclaimer. I did not pay for these flavors. Thank you, Vape Train. Right out of the gates, I have Vape Train's Vanilla Cream. So you've got vanilla, you've got cream, pretty much does what it says on the tin here. The vanilla, very nice. It's a very bright vanilla. It's not really floral and fruity or like dark and spicy. It's kind of just a sort of right down the middle vanilla flavor. It's a little bit more nuanced than something like straight vanillin though. I do get like a little bit of a depth of bright vanilla flavor that you don't necessarily get in a lot of the more simple vanillas. There is quite a lot of it though. Like in terms of this being a vanilla cream, it isn't a cream with a little bit of vanilla. It's kind of a cream backing up a very strong, prominent vanilla flavor. The cream here is definitely kind of playing second fiddle. For me, at least. I do get some kind of buttery richness, not a ton, but I need to stretch the imagination. It's still like a lighter kind of cream flavor, but it doesn't have much like dairy nuance to it. On the bright side of that, it's not like funky or butyric, or there isn't anything that's too realistic about it, but it feels like a creamy vanilla rather than a vanilla cream, if that kind of nitpicking makes any sense. Mouthfeel here is pretty good for like a cream-ish flavor. It's not thin or dry, but it's also not like too thick. You're not getting like vanilla frosting out of it. It definitely feels like it's about a cream kind of consistency, so I think the mouthfeel is probably dead on. It is a little bit sweeter than you would expect from like a normal straight cream. Like there's a little bit of extra sweetness to it. And I think it really does work well with the vanilla, but it definitely feels sweetened beyond what you'd call a sweet cream. Overall, this flavor is super pleasant to vape. Like it's a very good tasting flavor, but it kind of comes back to what you'd actually be using vanilla creams for. I feel like they're kind of a limited genre of flavor. A lot of creams have some kind of vanilla component to it, or a lot of vanillas have some sort of like creamier component to it. So it's not really a unique problem, but it is sort of something you got to think about. So if you just want vanilla, like in a drier bakery or like tobacco application, that cream's going to be way too much. It's going to make everything soggy. And if you just want cream, you have to be okay with a profile that's going to trend more into a vanilla cream. And then you start to run into issues like, well, why aren't you using like a vanilla ice cream or something like that if you want like a milkshake? Really, I think your best bet with this is kind of just keep it simple. Like it's good. I don't know what else you're going to be able to do with it. You could pair it with some fruits. It's going to make a very tasty vape, but it's kind of hard to turn these kind of vanilla cream flavors into much of anything if you're looking at layering. So I think you can make something very pleasant to vape, but I'm not sure it's a very useful tool for layering with other things. This feels a little bit on the weak side to me, both like unsteeped and steeped. It doesn't really magically get a lot stronger with time. Using it at lower accent kind of percentages, I do kind of feel like it falls down a little bit. There's just a little bit of vanilla. You don't really get any of like the cream nuance to it. It's just like kind of mediocre vanilla until you really start to crank it up. I think in order to get like that full cream thing, you're looking more like 5 to 8%. And since this is going to work a lot better in like simple profiles, I'd kind of be on the high end of that. So, you know, take like 6, 7% of this, throw in one big bright fruit. It's going to be tasty. Next, I have something that shouldn't be contentious at all. Vape Train Vanilla Ice Cream. And again, this is pretty solid. So it has a very similar vanilla to that vanilla cream flavor. It's again, brighter commercial kind of vanilla. It works out really well here. It doesn't really taste like a very complex vanilla ice cream, but you definitely do get a nice big slug of vanilla up front, which is really good. The ice cream base itself isn't particularly rich. I do find that I get like some more buttery notes, but it misses all of that like French vanilla egginess, which is either a good thing or a bad thing depending on what you want to do with it. It's more of a Philadelphia style ice cream, but it is a little bit richer than you'd expect from that. Up front, I feel like it does sell the richer part of the ice cream pretty well. That kind of creamier back end though, I feel like it could be maybe a little bit thicker because you do get some butter up front, a whole bunch of vanilla, and then it kind of tails off pretty drastically. It's not the thinnest ice cream I've ever tried by any stretch of the imagination, but it doesn't really hit the same levels of thickness and richness of TPA's vanilla bean ice cream or Hankson's French vanilla ice cream or even Liquid Barn's vanilla ice cream. It doesn't have that kind of like insane over the top kind of dap hit to it. On the bright side, might make it a little bit easier to work with, and I don't taste any kind of black pepper whatsoever from this. So instead of seeing this as a substitute for like the uber thick, just acetyl propanol in a bottle kind of TPA, Liquid Barn kind of vanilla ice creams, I would use this more as a substitute for something like Capella's vanilla bean ice cream or Flavor West's vanilla bean ice cream. Those are both a little bit on the thinner side, a little heavier on the vanilla. I like the vanilla here quite a bit. I feel like the mouth feels a little bit better than those. It's a little bit richer, so I would use it more like a very good, moderately thick ice cream as opposed to trying to sub this in for one that is just like dumb thick. This doesn't seem like a particularly concentrated flavor to me. Feels like it needs a little bit to get going. I think like the vanilla cream, it's kind of disappointing at accent percentages because you do get a little bit of butter and a little bit of vanilla, but it doesn't really come across at all like a vanilla ice cream. I think once you start cranking up to maybe 4% on the low end, 8% on the high end, you get like a thicker, more solid vanilla ice cream flavor. And generally, if you're using that, you kind of want to have a fairly heavy hand so that vanilla ice cream actually comes through. Don't know if this is a silver bullet to like let everybody who tastes black pepper from TPA's VBIC like indulge in their ice cream fantasies, but it's a pretty good solid entry if we're looking for a slightly more nuanced take on a vanilla ice cream that won't just dominate the entire profile. Last for today, I have Vape Train's Vanilla Buttercream Frosting. This is pretty good, actually. Out of this batch, this is definitely my favorite. So I've been talking about Vape Train having that very similar vanilla note between the flavors. It's kind of a frosting vanilla, right? Like a good frosting vanilla. Just so happens this is a frosting and it works very well here. It's still very bright, still works really well. Reminds me of a very like moderately priced like canned frosting. When they say buttercream, real buttercream for me isn't all it's cracked up to be. It usually is a little bit fatty and flat. It doesn't have a really bright flavor. I feel like the vanilla here is bright enough though that it really sort of balances well with those richer notes. I'd call the buttery notes in the base here moderate to heavy. It's not going to completely and totally blow you away, but it does have enough sort of richness and unctuousness to really sell that kind of frosting profile. It's not as waxy and thick as a real buttercream, but be some of the other frosting flavors. If you look at something like Cap's buttercream, for me, it just mostly tastes like wax. This definitely isn't that kind of really thick, dense, waxy flavor. It's actually also probably a little bit less dense than Flavours frosting. But where I feel like this works really well is that it has that brightness and intensity of the vanilla, and it does have some mouthfeel. And I feel like instead of kind of turning your entire mix into wax, like some of those other buttercreams have a tendency to do, this instead will kind of sit where you put it in a mix. Like if I was going to make a complex layered bakery recipe, I feel like this would be the frosting I go to because that it has enough texture, but not too much. So you'll still get a little bit of separation. It'll still do what it needs to do, but it won't bleed as much into the base of your bakery. Whereas those other flavors are a little bit on the weaker side, the vanilla cream and the vanilla ice cream. I feel like this works better a little bit lower. I'd start maybe around 2% with this. It does give you a little bit of mouthfeel. It gives you a little bit of vanilla. You can go up to about 4% for me. at least before it starts to get a little bit weird. 4% is a pretty solid frosting note, much higher than that, and it starts to almost get a little bit vegetal. It's very strange. Like, it tastes chemical, but not like bad chemical. Just it starts to taste a little bit artificial, and there's like a weird savoriness to the actual frosting note here, so I'd probably stick underneath 4%. But overall, if you're into frostings at all, this is a pretty solid get. So those were some Vape Train Vanilla Blank Creams. Overall, pretty good. Next video, we're going to be doing some odds and ends from Vape Train, but I did want to say if you want to check out the more detailed flavor notes, you can go to my very, very professional website, tasteofconcrete.com. There will be links in the description. I did want to say, though, thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I will catch you later. Next, I have something that I'm sure won't be contentious. Next, I have something that won't